Welcome to Love Lies Beneath. I'm Zet Harbor. And I'm glad to have you here. Do you feel like stress, fear, or pain take up way too much of your energy? Have you wondered if you'll ever be free of that heaviness of your past? Do you long to feel as good on the inside as your life looks on the outside? In this podcast, you'll discover the story of who you really are and how to set yourself free. Together, we're going to travel into those wild spaces of our inner landscapes and dive deeply into the rich soil of our lives, reclaiming soul through story and healing our hearts. My book, Love Lies Beneath, is the map. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss any of this enriching journey. And now, let the adventure begin. We begin part 2 of my book, Love Lies Beneath, how reclaiming my soul through story became the secret to healing my heart. In part 2, we are going to explore some of my absolute favorite traditional stories. And the very first one is the story that opened the door for me to this incredible world of wonder. Rumpelstiltskin. I love this story because it tells us so clearly what it is like to move through a process of fear, loss, abandonment, betrayal, grief, and discover our ability to create, to transform, to take sovereignty over our own lives and become fully who we are here to be. So now I'd like to read a section from my book, Rumpelstiltskin. Once upon a time, a king in a faraway country was traveling throughout his land. He stopped to talk to a weaver. The weaver bragged to the king that his daughter was so talented that she could spin straw into gold. This captured the king's attention very quickly, for he wanted gold as much as he could get. He told the weaver to send his daughter to the palace the next day so she could prove that he was telling the truth. If she failed, she would be put to death. After the king left, the weaver explained to his daughter what had happened and what she would need to do. Now the daughter had no idea what to do, but she obeyed her father, and the next day she went to the king's castle. There the king greeted her and took her to a very large room. This room was filled with stacks of straw, from floor to ceiling, everywhere she could see. He said to her, "Tonight, spin all of this straw into gold for me. If you do not, you will lose your life." With that, he closed and locked the door. So there she was, all alone, sitting in front of a spinning wheel with nothing but stacks of straw surrounding her. She picked up some of the straw and tried to put it through the spinning wheel. She wrapped it around the spindle, but it didn't work. No matter how much she crushed, twisted, and turned that straw. Finally, in her great frustration and her great fear, she began to cry. That's when she heard the sound of the door opening. She looked up, and to her amazement, there stood a tiny man dressed in clothes embroidered with gold thread. His eyes and skin glittered as he walked over to her and said, "Ah, Mistress Weaver, tell me, why are you crying?" She explained that if she did not spin all of this straw into gold, she would be put to death. She had no idea how to spin the straw into gold, and she broke down in tears again. "I will spin this straw into gold for you. Yes, I will do that. But you must pay me. What will you pay me?" She had a ring on her finger, and she offered it to the little man, and he happily accepted that as payment. So he sat down in front of the spinning wheel. He picked up a handful of straw, and soon he began to spin, whir, 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 and the girl found herself drifting off to sleep. The next morning she awoke to the sound of the door being unlocked. She looked up to see the king entering the room. He was amazed and so pleased because there was not one bit of straw left. In its place there were tall stacks of gleaming gold. That evening he took her to a second room. This one was even larger and filled with even more straw. He locked her once again in the room with the spinning wheel, telling her that if she failed to spin every bit of straw into gold by morning, she would be put to death. Once again, she sat down in front of that spinning wheel, and she picked up a handful of straw, and she twisted and crushed it and tried to wrap it around that spindle the way she had watched the strange man do. But it crumbled in her fingers and dropped to the floor. And no matter how hard she tried, she could not spin it into gold. She was so afraid and so frustrated that she began to cry. That's when she heard the sound of the door opening. And once more that little man with those golden embroidered clothes came in. He looked at her with his glittering eyes and said, "Mistress Weaver, why are you crying?" She told him that yet again she was required to spin all of the straw into gold, but she had no idea how to do it. If she did not, she would be put to death. "I can spin this straw into gold for you. Yes, I can do this. But you must pay me. What will you pay me?" She was wearing a necklace. She took it off and offered it to the little man, and he very greedily grabbed it from her. "Yes, this will do," he said. So now he sat down in front of the spinning wheel, and he began to spin. Whir, whir, whir. As the sound of the spinning wheel began, no matter how hard she tried to stay awake to watch how it was that he could spin straw into gold, she found herself falling deeply, deeply asleep. The next morning, she awoke to the sound of the door being unlocked by the king. He stepped in once again and was amazed and so happy to see all that gold. He told her that he would take her to the third and final room on this night, and if she could spin all of that straw into gold, her life would be spared. The king would marry her, and she would become the queen. So later that night, the king took her once again to a third room. This one was even larger than the one before. This one was filled with even higher stacks of straw. He locked the door and left her all alone, sitting there in front of the spinning wheel. She picked up the straw, but she knew it wasn't going to work. She knew she did not know how to spin straw into gold, and she knew that she would die if she did not. And so she began to cry. It was then that she heard the door opening, and now she was not surprised to see the strange little man with the glittering eyes. "Well, Mistress Weaver," he said, "it seems that I can be of service yet again." "Yes," she replied, "I cannot spin the straw into gold, and if I don't, I will die." "I will spin this straw for you," he said, "but you must pay me." What will you pay me?" "I have nothing left," replied the girl. "Ah, but the king will marry you after I spin this straw into gold. You shall become queen, and you will have a child. Promise that you will give me your first child." The weaver's daughter thought to herself, "Who knows if I am to be queen? Who knows if I shall have a child?" She agreed to the little man's terms. So he picked up a handful of straw, and he began to spin, whir, 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 and the sound of the spinning wheel lulled her to sleep. She awoke the next morning to the sound of the king unlocking the door. Once again he entered the room, and was so greatly pleased to see the stacks of gleaming gold from floor to ceiling. He kept his word and did marry the weaver's daughter, and she did become queen. And after about a year they did have a child. One night, when the king was off traveling throughout his land, the queen was sitting quietly in her room. Suddenly, that strange little man with the glittering eyes and the clothing embroidered with gold thread came in. "Ah, Mistress Weaver, it is time for you to pay me. You promised me your first child, and I am here. Give me the child." She had no idea when she made that promise what it would mean to have a child. She loved her child with all her heart. She could not let her baby go. She told him, "No, please, please don't take my child. I'll give you anything. Take all the treasures in the kingdom. I'll give you whatever you ask." "There's no treasure more valuable than a living thing. I want the baby. Give me the child." She began to cry and weep and beg him for some chance to pay him another way. He was moved by her tears and took pity on her. "I will give you another chance," he said. "You must tell me my name in 3 days' time. If you cannot, the child will be mine." And with that, he disappeared. The queen spent the entire night thinking of all the names she had ever heard. She sent a messenger to bring back names from far and wide. When the little man came the next evening, she asked him, "Is it Casper?" "No." "Is it Melchior?" "No." "Is it Balthazar?" "No," he said. "You have 2 more days to guess my name." And with that, he disappeared. The next day, the queen sent her messengers all throughout the countryside to gather all the most strange and unusual names they could find. The little man returned that evening. The queen asked him, "Is it Sheepshanks?" "No." "Is it Rottlebane?" "No." "Is it Spindlebottom?" "No, no. You have 1 more day to guess my name." And with that, he disappeared again. The queen sent her messengers out again that day, telling them to listen carefully to all they heard and bring her back any names. As evening fell, the last messenger returned and bowed before the queen. "Your Majesty, I came across something very strange. As I was walking through the woods today, there was a bonfire, and around that bonfire there danced a strange little man with glittering eyes and skin, wearing clothing embroidered with golden threads. As he danced around the bonfire, he sang this rhyme: 'Brew today, tomorrow bake, and after that the child I'll take. And sad the queen will be to lose it, but Rumpelstiltskin is my name, and luckily nobody knows it.'" The queen was so pleased and grateful to hear this. Not long after, the little man appeared. She said to him, "Are you Jack?" "No, that is not my name," he said. "Is it Harry?" "No, no, no. You have only 1 last chance." "Is it Rumpelstiltskin?" Hearing that, the little man became furious. "The devil told you that! The devil told you that!" he cried. In his anger, he stamped his right foot so hard that it sunk into the ground above his knee. Then he seized his left foot with both his hands in such fury that he split himself in two. He disappeared down into the ground and was never seen again. Exploring Rumpelstiltskin. I loved this story from the moment I rediscovered it as an adult. I was reading a picture book version to my 4-year-old daughter, which awakened powerful feelings in me. I remembered how I had felt as a child reading it, as well as the other Grimm's folktales. A mysterious and yet familiar vibration went through my entire body. It was calling me to come closer. Inspired by Jung's work, I suddenly realized that this story was very much like a dream. I could see the archetypes lifting off the page and taking shape in front of me. The characters were no longer imaginary and fictional. They carried a powerful truth about my life. This story and the many others like it had magic in them, and I wanted more. This story is why I became a storyteller. I leaped into the unknown and started performing stories for audiences. I also dove into the depths of the stories and explored magical realms of imagination and delight. I wrote about the folktales from the main character's perspective as if it was my own life story. I discovered the nooks and crannies of emotion and insight tucked inside each one. Here was an unexplored territory that had been in my life the entire time. I became an explorer of my own inner unmapped terrain, and each discovery felt like I was summiting a Himalayan peak. The landscape was exciting and the views were breathtaking. I was awestruck by the power of these stories. I wanted to shout about it from the rooftops. Like any newly converted believer, I eagerly and perhaps even at times obnoxiously shared the good word about the power of story. I saw story everywhere I looked. For me, they were all alive, dancing with meaning. As far as I could see, stories were living beings. They were generously beckoning us to discover ourselves within them. Suddenly, I felt as if I had been initiated into a wisdom school that had been hidden in plain sight. Story was as ordinary as the air, everywhere, all the time. Yet, it also existed as a portal into a vibrant landscape in which the treasures of the self waited to be found. Like breathing, it can be something taken completely for granted or made into an art. In doing so, it becomes a practice through which to attain peace and enlightenment. I felt the same way about story. For me, the strange little man, Rumpelstiltskin, was like the gatekeeper of that portal. Like the weaver's daughter, I too had been betrayed and threatened. I also needed something extraordinary to take place. Likewise, if I paid the price asked of me by this remarkable being, a great treasure would come to me, and my life would be richer than I had ever imagined. And when the time came, if I could name him, I would keep it. This story gives us the path through a particular life experience. Those moments when we find ourselves unpleasantly surprised by a change in our lives, by the dishonesty or betrayal of someone that we thought loved us, someone who probably did love us, and for whatever reason, their frailty, their failing, caused us to be caught in this situation. And once caught, our very existence seemed to be at stake. I like to think of the straw in the story as the events of our lives, the fairly ordinary stuff of life. Some of it's even mud-caked or covered with manure, but it's that ordinary straw. And how do we, as the beings walking in this three-dimensional plane, how do we take that straw and transform it into a rich, gleaming, enduring treasure? So I'd like to leave you with this thought. In the coming days, when you find yourself, like the weaver's daughter, alone, facing something so demanding, so daunting, that it feels like who you are is at risk. If you find yourself feeling betrayed, think about what she did. How did she walk through this? She didn't know what she was doing, but she listened to herself. She didn't listen to her head. She listened to her heart. And in those moments, her heart was filled with grief, and she cried. And that's when the little man came in. So what magical, transformative force lives within you that comes to you when you allow yourself to be present to your vulnerability, to your grief, and to your fear? Spend some time with that part of you. It exists within you. And there will come a time when you, too, will be asked to name it. And when you do, you will get to keep all of the treasures and riches and creative beings of your life. I'm Zet Harbor. This is Love Lies Beneath. Please subscribe to this podcast so that you will be with me every step of the way on this adventure as we go deeper into our wild landscapes within, as we discover more of our straw and our own ability to transform it into gold.